Now, one tweet by UK columnist Katie Hopkins triggered a storm online after she wrote, "Stand by for more pics of dead kids." And we can now speak live to Katie for more on the refugee crisis. So also happy to welcome political and social commentator Mo Anzar to this evening's debate. Mo, Katie, welcome to you both. I would like to start with you, Katie. We just mentioned your tweet. Quite a response, a lot of criticism online. People pointing out Syrians are being forced by war and bloodshed to flee their homes, take their children. What exactly were you trying to say with that tweet?
What I'm trying to say when I say stand by for more pics of dead kids, really, is that we see it now on a regular basis. Just today, actually, another 27 individuals died trying to cross the Med. And I think, really, we've had a year of this now where we've done nothing. There is no solution being presented. I've always argued the case that the only way to stop people dying in the Med is to get onto Turkey's borders, to get onto Turkey's coastline and stop the boats. I've always said, stop the boats. And we're not stopping them. And as another 100,000 Syrian refugees move towards Turkey, that guarantees another supply of refugees across the Med as soon as the weather gets a little bit warmer.
But, Katie, if you think back to the original horrific picture, 3-year-old Alan Kurdi, who died on the beach in Turkey. Now, his family actually applied for asylum in Canada. They were refused. So if they'd been granted asylum, he could still be alive. Isn't that the way to solve the problem, by actually granting asylum, not turning them away?
I think you've bought all of the stories that you've read in the media. I don't think you've looked beyond the headlines. You know, ultimately that family was safe in Turkey. And if you've reached a safe space, surely you should stay there. They wanted to leave to look for a better life. I accept that. But that picture was also staged and taken by a woman because women know the impact of looking at little feet. What it did, of course, was made that politicians made decisions with their heads, with their hearts, sorry, not their heads. And we need people to make strong decisions with their heads, not with their hearts, because they've seen a picture of a small drowned child.
Well, you say it's staged, but he was a dead child, and there's nothing you can stage about that. Nothing changes that, no matter what you do.
Nothing changes that, and nothing changes the child that was washed up on the beach the other day as well, and nothing will change the next one, because we're not stopping this. No one's doing anything about it. It's OK to criticise me. I'm the one that writes the columns about it, but ultimately we need people to take action, and no action is being taken, and we've got Merkel, the mother of all migrants, welcoming them in and encouraging them to make that dangerous crossing.
Although she is somewhat changing a tune of late. Let's move on to Mohammed Ansar now.
Well, funnily enough, yes.
Yeah, Mohammed, I'd just like to move on. We've covered a number of rape attacks by refugees. Most recently, the horrific case of a 10-year-old boy raped at a pool in Vienna. And today, his mother, who is an immigrant herself, has become very hostile to asylum seekers. So you're seeing some cases of immigrants actually becoming hostile to other aspiring immigrants. You can't blame them in this situation, can you?
No, absolutely not. And, you know, stop the press. Guess what? Immigrants sometimes commit crimes too. In the UK, we have something like on a daily basis the rape and sexual abuse of 200 women and 50 children every single day. Let's not pretend for a second that this is caused by immigrants and waves of cockroaches, as I think Katie's spoken about them in the past, of migrants coming here. I mean, the dehumanisation and the othering of immigrants, of foreigners, of Muslims coming into Europe, the xenophobia. Katie herself has said, show me the bodies floating in the water, play violins, show me skinny people looking sad, I still don't care. And she's also called for gunships to force migrants back. This kind of peddling of hate and hysteria, the idea that immigrants are somehow super sexualised, that they're committing crimes on a greater level than Europeans themselves are committing crimes, that there's no room, that they are an economic burden, all of these kind of things are myths and fables and hysteria and hate and prejudice that the likes of Katie and the far right are very, very happy to peddle.
Katie, surely you must agree with that in some sense. You can't believe that all immigrants are criminals and rapists. They're no worse than anybody else, surely.
I think there's no way, there's no chance I'll ever agree with a single word that comes out of Mo's little face. You know, ultimately, what he loves to do is sling a label around xenophobe, far right, Islamophobe. Get ready for it, because he loves to label people. I'm not from the far right. You know what?
If the label sticks, wear it, Katie. If the label sticks, wear it.
Do you mind? do you mind, Mo? You can throw labels all you want, but they mean nothing to me. I'm a hard-working British taxpayer, and taxpayers do not want to fund migrants who are coming to our countries and show no gratitude whatsoever for the fact that we have welcomed them in. We had a situation on New Year's Eve where 500 women were assaulted in one way or another, and the police said, do you know what, the evening passed off calmly, the evening passed off well. This whole idea we have to repress bad stories about migrants, and we can only speak about them in terms of kind of ultimate welcome, and we can only speak about migrants with reverence. I don't buy into that one jot. And just because, as Mo says, women are attacked in the UK doesn't make it right. More rapes do not make it right. They make those rapes wrong, but they make rapes by migrants even worse.
But
a
Katie,
guy raping
Katie.
a 10-year-old and saying it was because he hadn't had sex for 4 months. Are you really defending that, Mo Anza? Because you should be ashamed.
Do you
Stop saying
believe
my
that
name.
immigrants are more likely to commit criminal acts than natives? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, I'm saying that. It's shown to be true in the statistics. I think culturally the two don't map together. They have no respect for white women whatsoever. They do not have respect for me. I'm a dirty Kafir as far as they're concerned. They call me a whore, and they'd be happy to use me at their will. And I don't want myself nor my daughters exposed to those type of gentlemen. And gentlemen they are not.
I assume you've got some response
Katie,
to that, man.
I'm the son of...
He has nothing. He has nothing
I'm
but
the
labels.
son of... I'm the... Katie, don't shout over the top, dear. Have some respect. This is the British democratic values and liberal values, Katie. Katie, at the end of the day, I'm British, I'm a Muslim, I'm the son of an immigrant, I'm married to an immigrant, my father's an immigrant. I won't keep on going on about immigration.
That's fantastic.
Katie, the kind of hate, and hysteria that you peddle
Do you want an award
is the
for
kind
being
of
a
stuff
Muslim, Mo?
that gets people... Katie, the kind of hate and hysteria that you peddle is the kind of stuff that gets you sacked from your column, all right? The kind of hate and hysteria that you peddle is the kind of stuff that gets you chucked off this morning. Katie, the point is that people won't listen to you anymore. You don't have a credible voice. You have far more... Well, whether you've been sacked or not, the point is you don't work for them anymore, Katie, right?
Mo, Katie, I'd just like to ask Katie...
Katie's an extremist.
Mo, let me just ask Katie a question. She's made it very clear that she doesn't want immigrants coming across to the UK. What I would ask is, because there was a UN report, it was just over a year ago, but things haven't changed so much in terms of age groups, that more than 50% of immigrants, refugees around the world are aged under 18, that almost 40% of them are under 11. You've got children. Surely you must think that it's a good idea to help children, and there's a large percentage of them who need help and need protecting from war zones, from threats to their lives.
Of course, and you can put your violin away now, but frankly, I think what's really important is that we send financial aid to Syria in order to try and keep people in location. We look after them in location, and they can return to the country that they love. I don't think leaving the country that you love in order to make a perilous journey across the Med is the right solution. I would never put my child in an inflatable without a life jacket, or a life jacket that doesn't work.
Katie, in World War II, when Britain's children were in danger, we sent them.
If you talk over me, Mo, I'm going to talk over you.
No, this is Neil in the studio. Katie, I just want to pick up on a point that you said.
Over you too, then.
I would just like to pick up on a point that you said, please. You're talking about children. In World War II, Britain evacuated its children from the cities to the countryside. It considered them to be in mortal danger. They didn't say, oh, let's send them some aid and they'll be OK. Surely you must understand that moving children to safety is important.
I do, and that's why we've just given €3 billion to Turkey to say, look, Turkey, we need your help, we need you to build accommodation, we need you to build schools, and these children need to be in schools. But once you've reached a safe destination, you need to stay there, and it's the reason we've given them so much funding. What you don't want to do is put your small baby into an inflatable where they will die, and you don't need to come to Greece, and you don't need to come to the mainland of Europe. Now, what we have a problem with, given that you mentioned World War II, is Germany is so desperate to make up for its past that it feels that it has to welcome all migrants, and that's the very reason they started coming here. We have turned a trickle into a flood, and that flood has to be stopped, and I don't see many people, including Mr. Anza, with any solutions to the issue.
Mohammed, I'd just like to move the topic slightly. A recent survey in France asked people how they'd react if their children were to marry Muslims. More than half of those surveyed said they would be against it. Is this not a strong sign that the anti-Muslim sentiment is not being tackled effectively?
Yeah, I think the rise of far-right prejudice and hate and hysteria and anti-Muslim animus and attacks, firebombings on mosques, killings of people in the street and attacks everywhere, I think we've seen this dark cloud rise again across Europe. And it's what history teaches us. Every so often, Europe seems to lose its way. It disconnects itself from its past, from its traditions of tolerance and liberalism and of having an exceptional attitude towards the other. And I think this is exactly the kind of hate and hysteria and right-wing rhetoric that we're seeing. The fact that many people in Europe today, and certainly in Britain, are swayed by disgusting, xenophobic, hate-filled arguments by the likes of Katie Hopkins and the far right and Pegida and the BNP and the English Defence League. And I do hold governments complacent here, and I do hold governments responsible here for their complacency and their acquiescence. We need to clamp down on this kind of hate speech. We have a great tradition of reaching out to immigrants, people in need, of humanitarian efforts throughout the Second World War, and the idea that Muslims are somehow the other, I think is terrible. We cannot judge all white English women by the actions of extremists and hate preachers like Katie Hopkins. Just as similarly, you can't judge all immigrants and Muslims by the actions of a few.
Katie, I want to come to you with a slightly different subject. We've seen leaflets handed out in Europe to try and explain to some refugees how they should be behaving. Do you think there's any effectiveness achieved by these, or is this a complete waste of time?
No, I think they're a complete waste of time, actually. You know, in swimming pools when I was a child, it used to be no bombing, no diving, no heavy petting. You know, and those have come back, haven't they? Because migrants don't know how to behave in swimming pools. But I don't think there's any point handing out leaflets.
Because Jimmy Savile was a migrant. Jimmy Savile was a migrant, wasn't he, Katie?
Sorry, could you stop, actually, Mo?
Because Jimmy Savile was a migrant, wasn't he?
Would you mind not talking, Mo, because I'm talking and actually it's my time to talk. So I don't think handing out leaflets is helpful.
Katie.
Because this is, would you mind, Mo? Because it's culturally ingrained. These guys don't think white women are worth anything, and I think that's the tragedy. And what I find particularly peculiar in all of this, of course, is that Mo seems to find it inexplicable that we have this attitude. Whereas, of course, if you go to Paris and you gun down 114 young people, if you gun down people on holiday, if you gun down people that are in Europe, that we're trying to create a culture of fear, that's why people are frightened of migrants. That's why people are frightened of Muslim men. And I completely understand their fear. And I look to stand up and speak for the British public who are sick of all of this, sick of welcoming migrants and want to have some kind of sense.
You don't speak for the British public, Katie. You really don't speak for the British public. I think it's horrifying that you think you speak for the British public. Katie, it's horrifying that you think you speak for the British public. Over and over again, we find that your views are complete anathema. They're complete anathema to the idea. Look, Europe is the richest continent in the world. We've got 740 million inhabitants here. There is more than enough room. There's more than enough space. We have more than enough jobs. We have an ageing white British society, and we have a record structural deficit. Every bit of research, from the CBS to the Institute of Fiscal Studies to the Office of National Statistics, and the Treasury's own figures say the same, which is migrants add value to the economy, they enrich our society, they bring multiculturalism, they bring added interest. We have criminality here, and the fact that we're struggling with some of this is issues that we need to...
Katie, I just want to ask you about
all you have is rhetoric and hate.
Katie, David Cameron's quite concerned about the refugee camp in Calais coming over to Kent if the UK leaves the EU, but they're going to bring value, according to Mo. They're going to bring experience. Presumably you're terrified of this happening.
No, I'm not terrified of it happening. I'm more terrified that David Cameron has gone to kind of this campaign of fear when we're getting a European referendum. Happily, though, the French government has come out swinging today and said, look, what David Cameron said is a load of nonsense. We have an agreement in place. That camp will stay in Calais. Personally, I'd like to see it bulldozed. They have been offered accommodation with heating and electricity, but guess what? They don't want to use it because you have to put your thumbprint on to get inside that accommodation, and they don't want to be identified. Funny that, isn't it? But actually, I don't think that camp is coming to the UK, and I'm very happy that it won't be. And I think David Cameron needs to focus on being a bit more positive about his very poor campaign to stay inside Europe.
And I just want to give the final word to Mo, who hadn't had a chance to speak for the last few minutes. 30 seconds, if you could,
Why?
because you've kind of dominated slightly.
But it tends to be tosh, actually, what he says.
And Mo, final comments?
Katie, that's enough from you, Katie. That's enough from you, Katie.
Another label. Give us another label, Mo. Why not?
Thank you. I think one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that there are people with some really nasty and dark views and are interested in whipping up hate and hysteria against foreigners. We have always been a continent, we've always been a country that has sought to reach out to people who are in need, to give humanitarian aid and effort. Europe currently takes a tiny, tiny fraction, and of those tiny fraction, Britain has taken the tiniest fraction of these people who are fleeing.
And it's given the second
around
most.
80%.
It's given the second
80%
most
of the
in
migration.
Syria.
80% of the migration that is coming. 80% of the migration
Qatar
coming
has
to
not
Europe and to
taken a
Britain
single
are people
migrant.
fleeing. Are people who are... Well, then, Katie, you know, I'd happily ship you off. I'd happily ship you off to Qatar, and you can deal with it in Qatar, Katie, because your views do not reflect the views of British and English people.
Mohammed, Katie, it's been an absolute pleasure.
No, it's 'cause you're
fascinating.
Katie Hopkins.
And I hope we can get you both back on sometime.